Bienvenidos, buenas tardes. I'm so excited you're all here, and I'm very tempted to do this in Spanglish, but I will not torture everyone that way. So I am so pleased to be here with all of you, and thanks to the incredible team at Techqueria for having us today. What an exciting summit to be part of. I've been in some of the sessions, and it's been really cool. So I'm going to be as brief as possible, introduce myself so we can jump right in. So my name is Victoria Wales, and before my married name, I was actually, it was Bitzer. And I remember years ago that a new colleague had kept asking me what my maiden name was, and I was sort of confused, and I said, well, Bitzer. And it wasn't until later that it dawned on me, a little bit confused about the question, was that she was expecting I would have a Spanish last name. So it turns out, you know, my father's actually German, and my mother is Bolivian, and I was born in La Paz, a beautiful and pretty unique capital with an elevation of approximately 12,000 feet. It's a beautiful place, hard to breathe. I've got a whole receta if anybody ever goes visit. It's intense. The altitude is quite intense, but this is really to show what a rich ethnicity we come from, and how we come from all walks of life, origins, and circumstances. So I'm super excited to introduce the panel shortly and tell you why I'm so passionate and why everybody here is so passionate about government services, and particularly our mission to modernize the federal government system. So our group is actually part of the General Services Administration, which is a federal agency that, among other things, helps provide key infrastructure to government agencies, from buildings to IT, all within GSA. And we're situated in the Technology Transformation Services, or TTS, as we like to call ourselves for short. And our mission is to improve the lives of the public and public servants by transforming how government uses technology. And we do that by helping agencies across the Fed government to make their services more accessible, more efficient, and effective with modern applications, platforms, processes, personnel, and software solutions. So I happen to work at the IT Modernization Centers of Excellence. We're the new kids on the block, is how we call ourselves. We're a pretty new program within TTS. And my colleagues, whom I'll introduce very shortly, work at the Presidential Innovation Fellows at 18F and Cloud.gov, respectively. So I really encourage you all to learn more about each of our organizations and what we focus on. And if we don't cover something you might be curious about during the conversation, please do reach out to us. We have all of our LinkedIns, and we have the chat feature too that we'll be monitoring throughout the conversation. So my particular background has been in social marketing, and I help run strategic communications and change management teams that implement modern tech solutions at federal agencies. I firmly believe that we cannot be successful without people. No technology will ever replace a relationship or a mindset regarding innovation. And so I'm thrilled to have this unique opportunity to help push government services to the next level, not just through tech, but through modern workforce practices, really strong partnerships across government, and robust communications and approaches. So what do we do? So the session is called Building Community and a Career in Civic Tech. So we're public servants. We are a nonpartisan group and a mix of career feds and short-term feds. And happy to delve into the differences later on if you do have more questions about that. So with that, I'm going to jump right in and introduce our panelists. First is Ariel Faber, Presidential Innovation Fellow detailed to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Ariel currently serves as the first Presidential Innovation Fellow detailed to CMS, where she leads efforts to build and formalize the agency's human-centered design capability. She applies a healthcare quality lens to cross-agency work, specifically in the COVID-19 response and rural health. We also have Jessica Castillo, Business Partnerships for Cloud.gov. Jessica currently serves as the business lead and strategist for Cloud.gov with a focus on data analysis, user experience, research and design, consumer marketing outreach, and agile process improvement methodology. And Cloud.gov is a secure and compliant platform as a service that helps federal agencies deliver the services that the public deserves in a faster and more user-centered way. And last but certainly not least, Stephanie Rivera, who's a full stack bureaucrat at 18F. Stephanie called herself a full stack bureaucrat because she's also an amazing business strategy advisor for login.gov, an identity and verification platform for government websites. And she's working on professionalizing and personalizing and expanding the partnerships team, and has had a very long career in the federal government. So would love to answer your questions. Please do drop them in the chat, as I mentioned, and we'll leave a little bit of time for actual conversation, but we'll dig into some of the questions because I'm sure you're all curious about some of the folks' backgrounds and what they're bringing to government. So let's start with you, Ariel. What was your path to public service, and how did you learn about your job? How did you come across the PIF program, as we like to call it?
Thank you for the question, and thank you all so much for having us here. So I'll start with what even brought me into public service. Public service is definitely a huge part of my upbringing. So I grew up in a household that really put an emphasis on service and on protecting human dignity, whether that was through healthcare or military or law. And I want to shine a light on two particular people that really inspired my move into public service, who happen to be women in STEM who are also Hispanic. So my mom and my grandmother really played critical roles in this path. My grandmother really put an emphasis on really practicing humility, and it was in growing up, going to her nursing home, where she practiced as a nurse and was an entrepreneur and started this nursing home, that I really saw what it meant to intimately care for people in their most vulnerable moments. And there were always a lot of different languages spoken in that environment, and a wealth of human stories. And seeing that environment had a huge impact on me in looking at service to individuals. Shifting to my mom, growing up, I often heard about her experience as a bilingual mental health care provider. And it was in having these kind of daily conversations in the household that identity, belonging, service, and serving with humility were really intertwined. And so that really led me to constantly seek opportunities professionally where this idea of serving others, especially in the moments that were most difficult, and especially serving in communities where people's stories may not be heard, was very influential in me stumbling upon a listing for the Presidential Innovation Fellowship in the first year that it was launched. So it was quite serendipitous in actually finding the program, but I think that a series of search terms that I was constantly looking for in this realm of service for others, healthcare, and design ended up leading me there.
That's really helpful. I didn't know a good part of that background, so thank you for sharing that. One of the things we talked about too when we were discussing this event and a little bit of our experience and what brought us to TTS was kind of this journey. And I would love Jessica to chime in here and tell us a little bit about how you came to TTS and cloud.gov and what path you took, because I think that would be really interesting to the group here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. First, really happy to be here. So my path is a little, I did a career change. So I come from private sector. I've always been like consulting or some kind of capacity. I worked for Procter & Gamble for a good amount of time in the Latin American multicultural space. And so I didn't think I was ever going to be in the government. I actually have family members in the government. And to me, I was like, that just isn't aligned. I need faster work. I need a certain tempo. Like, I want challenges. So I went to go get my master's, and somehow I ended up taking systems engineering, and I was so good at it. Yeah, I was good at it. I'm going to go ahead and pat myself. And then I was like, whoa, I never had challenged my brain to think like that, because as a woman, even though there's engineers, men in my family, they always push me to communications or like business admin or something. And so I took the class and I was like, oh, there's something to this. So being in DC, there's like when you go to, well, at GW, there was recruitments, a lot of recruiters coming to campus. And I was with, just to kind of make the story relatable, I was being poked by the big four, so Deloitte and Accenture and all those big guys, and they have a private sector and a federal space. And so in DC, you get poked a lot for federal work. And again, I knew I was gonna make so much money. I was just like, oh, I'm going for this for sure. But then someone came on campus and they were like, do you wanna work for the Google of government? And I was like, what is that? There's no way there's such a thing. I know the government. And then they started talking about 18F. And then I started doing my research and I was like, huh. So to get into the government is not the easiest thing. And because of that, it was always something that I didn't think I would put the energy towards. But I came in through a Pathways program, which is for recent graduates. So if you have graduated within the 2 years of your graduation date, there's like a pipeline that exists for certain programs because they want expertise to start young talent and expertise to come into the government. And they're seeking that actively. You don't know that as the public, but internally within government, it is a big hotspot. We want it young, vibrant, we want new talent, fresh. So the face of government is evolving. So I came into this thing called Emerging Leaders Program that GSA has, which you get to tour the agency for 2 years in rotations, which would be like internships, but you're getting paid a salary for this. You are guaranteed a job at the end. But just to give you a sense, you're doing 3 to 4 months in different offices to get a sense of where your skills best play, and then also like what your interests are and how you want to evolve and grow with the government. And so I went into TTS, the Technology Transformation Services organization, which is where all of us, the umbrella in which all of us work, and I never left. And I rotated through the building and I never left. And so what I appreciate is that all of the consulting, all of the business, my engineering skills, I'm constantly using those skills. And trust me, I don't want to be somebody that can't find a job if I ever want to leave the government. And so I found a home in TTS in which, either through training or just because I have exposure to professionals from private sector that have come to public service, folks that have worked at Nintendo, Google, all of the big names that you admire and myself too, they're there to kind of push and bring that level of talent within public service. And one of the key, I'm gonna kind of, I know my time is probably up, but one of the key things that I thought was really important was when I was doing public service, it was important when I was working in the private sector, all of the projects that I would pick, here's a pattern to pay attention to. I wanted them to be cause related. So I already knew that purpose was something that was important to the type of work that I take on. So going into public service wasn't a far-fetched. I think eventually I was going to go there. I just didn't know that things like TTS existed. I hope that was helpful.
Oh, I love it. I think this is why I was so excited to moderate this amazing panel, because you all bring so many great perspectives and experiences, which is a great segue into my question for Stephanie about, what attracted you to your first or your current role, since you said you've been in government for a little while. You can give us an example of, what really attracted you.
Well, let's see. I was in grad school during the 9/11 attacks. And I was in grad school for U.S. foreign policy. And after 9/11, I switched it to national security. And so I knew I was already like a government mindset person. I just didn't know I was going to go kind of the security route. So I went into intelligence right out of grad school. From there, I did that for a couple of years. Then I realized that I really love sunlight and working during the day and talking to people about my job. So I moved into organizational design and helped set up CIO offices when those were like the new hot things, because there was a lot of bridge between Intel and CIO because you had all the information systems. And then I came over to GSA as a chief of staff for the Office of Government-Wide Policy. And I was there for 4 years. And that's incredibly fascinating. Policy-wise, it doesn't touch technology really at all. But if you want to know how per diem is set up, I'm your girl. And then I found 18F when I moved out to California. And they needed somebody who was fluent in government and could kind of help build up the San Francisco office. So I came on board to help build up the San Francisco office, kind of be that bridge. And I took on a number of different roles as we were just kind of starting to build up 18F, including running all of the accounts, the head of the custom partner solutions. And now I am a strategic senior advisor. And I go out, to various places and kind of help set up their digital services. So right now I'm with login.gov, which is an identity and verification service. Specifically, I've been brought in to help their partnerships team, which is growing from one lonely person who's really doing a lot of work, and it's going to eventually be about five to seven people. So it's all about how do we expand this business? How do we make ourselves cost recoverable? How do we make sure that we are providing really easy access and a good relationship and a good experience for our partner clients? So that's where I am right now.
So many different opportunities across government where you've moved around quite a bit, which really speaks to what is not an average day in the life or what would be. And can you share, perhaps Ariel, I'll throw this your way, an example of how you apply your skills and expertise in public service and GovTech and what public service has felt like to you in your current role?
So I would say the first that comes to mind is surprising. So my role as a PIF in government is extremely dynamic. Every day is different, and it feels like there's an infinite number of opportunities to make an impact, especially at scale. And that's a piece that really motivates me every day. What is most motivating alongside that is working with people who really have this shared value for building services with people really at the heart of them. And so the kind of path of my day that is most consistent is really in being able to serve as a microphone or a loudspeaker of sorts for many of the folks that I work with. So I am currently detailed to CMS. What is really exciting and creative about the PIF program is there is also this piece of the program that enables you to not only work in this designated agency, but also between agencies. And so the topics that I work on could be anything from, in a given day, workforce resilience and development to digital health, to COVID response, to building the CMS cloud capability. And throughout all of those different strategic initiatives, really what brings it all together is keeping my ear to the ground, not only to understanding and learning from leadership around kind of what is it that we hope to accomplish and how can we do so, but also what are the great things that are already happening across the agency and across government that staff have been working on for years and may or may not have had the opportunity to share, and really elevating those voices. And I think that again kind of ties back to what brought me into government, which is, you know, every chance you have the opportunity to pass the microphone, I think it's a privilege and a responsibility to do so. And especially working in the healthcare space and at the intersection of healthcare and technology, thinking about the digital divide and who doesn't have access and whose voice is missing, I think is really critical to be able to make sure that if the individuals who have that lived experience aren't in a room where decisions may be made, how can we bring that perspective into the room? How can we channel it? How can we find critical data to support decision making?
I love that. I think, you know, we talk a lot about what brings us to the space, and the mission is such a key part of that, and how we apply our experience and our expertise to also, you know, lift each other up, but really connect with what really the actual experience is for people using, you know, government services. So with that, I'll pass it to Jessica, and I've seen your skills in action, but I would love for you to tell us a little bit about what public service has meant for you, and why you're so excited to, you know, work in the public sector every day. And what are some of the challenges?
Yeah, so I'll start with my motivations. I love to know that I'm doing something that impacts my life, our lives. I'm thinking through just technology and how folks find housing, affordable housing, education. Like, I have student loans, so Department of Ed is a client, customer, a partner. How do we save money? So I'm on the business. I lead the business unit for cloud.gov, which provides cloud services across government. And so I get excited when I'm like, oh, we don't have to use a private company. We can really just purchase, because if you know anything about government, we have to purchase in a way in which there's a lot of paperwork involved. And sometimes we have to either, like, the private sector isn't able to accommodate us. And so that's what we specialize, is making sure that agency to agency, we are only purchasing what you need, which then saves us money. We can give money back to Congress when it's not used, those level of details. But I think it really just knowing that when I leave work, yes, we work hard. I'm not gonna lie, like TTS, the standard is the same as the private sector, I would say. If not, it's matched. You don't just come here and be like, "Ooh, I get to chill." No, I think what are the advantages is that as a newbie to the engineering industry, I did have a space where I can fail, and also, like, there was that level of learning. There was a pace where it was enriching, and I could really, like, connect. Where in the private sector, they kind of expect you to hit the ground running from the first day. And not to say that I didn't have those things, but this space allowed for training, and allowed for proper care of where I wanted my career to go to next. And so all elements, but knowing that after that 8-hour day, when I close my laptop, I did something that is literally feeding me back. Like, my taxes, I have an insight into how the operations work, how decisions are made. That's very valuable to me, and it matters to me. So it's a motivator.
Love that. And I'm really enjoying also what folks are sharing in the chat and what they're connecting with about different paths to Paulina. We totally agree. It's kind of a, you know, a winding road sometimes of, you know, what, how you end up in different projects, as we heard from Stephanie too, you know, what that sort of looks like to work in different offices and even start. Think about the entrepreneurship aspect too of working within government. That's huge, and that's not something we're often really known for, but we build quite a lot. We build new teams. We, you know, retire things that don't work, legacy systems, things like that. So I think that's a good segue to my next question. I'm going to ask Stephanie to jump into this, and I would love to hear everybody else's perspective too, about, you know, how do you build, you know, a community and really make an impact within government and civic tech, and what has that experience looked like for you? What have you learned in your time in doing in this space particularly, and working across other government agencies too?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, especially considering that most of us are virtual. So you have to be very deliberate about formulating friendships and formulating working relationships. I like to say that Slack is the water cooler. So when people are like, well, how do you find out? I was like, you go to Slack, you chat with people in Slack, you have coffee with them. It's the same coffee, except that, you know, everybody has to bring it themselves and it's on their desk. But you do need to be really deliberate about who you're making, be deliberate about outwardly going out and talking to people and forming those relationships. I was in a meeting last week where this name popped up. I hadn't seen that woman in 20 years. I was like, hey, you remember when we worked on that project? Now she was with a different agency, I was with a different office, but we still had that instant connection of, oh yeah, okay, I know how to work with you. Great, I'm glad we're both being tasked on this project together. And so, you know, somebody asked me once, I think interviewing for a job in government, like, how do you create trust? And I thought that was such a funny question, because you create trust by being trustworthy. Like, you, by doing the things you want others to do, that's how you create the reputation for being the person that does the things that everybody wants to get done. And I think just being very deliberate about that, even though that we are at our home, you know, nobody is coming in here to check on my work, but I do know that I'm sending it off. There's people that I talk to, there's people that are expecting it. And you have to be really deliberate and focused about it. But Ariel, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I think that community is also very personal, right? And so I know for me, it's always this balance. Of, you know, also what does it mean to build community in the workplace versus outside of the workplace? And I kind of see the communities in government that I've started to become part of in my short time, centering around a few different groups. So definitely in the PIF community, because it's a very small but mighty group, you know, having the opportunity to not only have kind of these all hands or weekly touch points with everyone, but also I think one of the best ways to get to know people is to work with them and to struggle through things. And, you know, regardless of what those challenges look like, I think that's been also a very humbling experience to be able to have folks not only in PIF, but also in agency that are willing to embrace this, you know, fail fast mentality that folks may associate more so with private sector, this emphasis on empathy-driven work, and also acknowledging that, you know, the folks that we work with truly represent such a cross-cutting, these cross-cutting communities across the US and the world. And so how do we show up for one another, not only in these moments where, you know, we're giving a presentation or we're working through something, but when, you know, something that we really need thought partnership, that we have that psychological safety built to really navigate those topics.
I love that you ended with that, because I think we talk a little bit about, you know, creating those spaces, right? And talking about community and how we're building that impact too, and driving some of that impact too. What would you all say, or what do you wish more people knew, in particular with attracting Latinx talent, right? About jobs within government and government technology. I have many thoughts about this, particularly like sometimes folks don't know what they don't know. They don't know that there are these different spaces they can make such a big impact, or they might think that, you know, some of the work is dated, or, you know, what do you see from your perspective as an opportunity to attract this incredibly awesome, diverse, you know, group to want to be and want to come work for government? And I know we lost Jessica
Want me to
because I know
take it?
she'd have some thoughts. Yeah, sure. Hopefully
take it.
Jessica will join us back.
Yeah, just, you know, oh, I have a lot of thoughts on it. Okay, anyways, so my first thought is that government is huge, and probably just about anything that you find out there in the private sector is being done at the government. And more likely than not, it's being done at scale. Like, it's huge. So one of the things that I find very attractive is that you can make small tweaks to like policy or code or, you know, what have you. And it has a huge impact because it affects so many people. Jessica's back. So that's one of the things that I find really impressive. The other thing that I think is kind of a myth that's out there that I just chuckle with every time is if somebody tells me it's a government conspiracy, because like, we're not that together. There's no government conspiracy. We don't have it together. We need you to come in so that we can start bridging and talking to each other, and making sure that all parts of the government are working the way that they're supposed to be working for the people that they serve. So never think that it's beyond you, because it's not, and never think that there isn't a spot for you, because the government is richer for having you here and having your perspectives heard. And it continually needs that. I was just on a call with somebody about why do we need, you know, we have a call center, why do we need Spanish and French translation? Why are we paying for this? And I was like, are you kidding me? Because I got a contract with the IRS and we're going to hit every taxpayer. You think they're all speaking English? No. You keep my French, you keep my Spanish. Next, move on. They need people to come in and be able to say things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done, and it really needs good people here to be able to do it.
This is a perfect timing for a Jessica question then. I would love for you to build on that a little bit. I'm very curious for your thoughts on, you know, what do you wish people knew more about jobs within the government? You mentioned the Emerging Leaders Program, which I think is such a fabulous program for getting young talent and learning early on from government or what's available in government careers. What do you think? What do you wish more people knew about jobs within government and government technology?
Great question. And to be frank, I think that I still learn every day about the opportunities that exist within government. So keep that in mind. There's just so much. But I will say, think of your life, right? Like, I wanted to be 100% virtual. I didn't know how that was going to happen. And that's happening now through the government. I wanted to do that when I was in private sector. I was like thinking I just had to make more money to do it, but that's not even the case. Like, I think about the lifestyle you want to have and make your choices around that. Consider that, because truly, when I first came here, I wanted to do emergency management. I was so interested in FEMA and doing, and since I came through the Emerging Leaders Program, I had flexibility to work in different offices throughout GSA. But I remember I wanted to do the whole, and I know, V, you've done some work in Puerto Rico, and I wanted to have access to be boots on the ground and to be on the responding side of it. But we now do that from a technology standpoint. So I've now learned that I don't have to be boots on the ground. I can still contribute, whether it be through acquisitions or the different portfolios within CTS. I can do that. So the things I didn't know is that there is very transferable skills. I think one thing I did, and here's a tip, I was so afraid that I was gonna have some ceilings coming into the government that I really just started reaching out to folks and like doing one-on-ones to hear their experience at work. So if you are interested in really connecting with folks and asking them the questions that maybe you don't want to put in the chat or something, or just creating space or time, that's one of the things I did. I interviewed people that were working here and I asked them realistically, and they told me, hey, at the 3 years, you get vested. At 5 years, you know, I heard things that I didn't, you get a pension. Like, I don't want to make it just about that, because for me, I knew purpose was important as well. But there are some aspects and elements I didn't even consider that were even a further selling point for me. And I'm just being honest about that. So I think doing your research, but going on USA Jobs and just do a keyword search on whatever skill set it is that you're interested, whether it be virtual or whether it be healthcare, and just don't even limit yourself to tech. Just see what comes up and read the job description. And then, yeah, I think that those are some tips, but you're never going to stop. The great thing is that government life, you can be at GSA, you can go to another agency, you can go to other parts of the agency that you're in, and it's going to be a whole new job. So the career is endless here.
For that, and thank you for mentioning the work in Puerto Rico. Something I was the most humbling experience of my professional and personal life after Hurricane Maria, to build a team there within the office actually of external affairs. So talk about all the different avenues that you can work in technology, and all types of support staff. And the government needs you. They need bilingual folks, multilingual folks with many different paths, and our government should look like, you know, the United States and represent the United States. So with that, I know we want to jump into questions, but if you want to share maybe your last bit of advice that you wish you told your younger self, or a career in government, I'll share mine, which was, you know, I was not born in the United States, so I never thought a federal career would be within my grasp, because I knew my journey was going to be long to becoming a citizen, and I became one in 2015, and I was very, very honored to be able to actually work in the federal government. But, you know, I didn't really know what I didn't know, and Pat's there. And I think, you know, I heard a lot of things about how difficult it was to work in government. So with that, I'll turn it over to whomever wants to start and give a little piece of advice so we can dig into some questions.
I'm happy to share a piece of advice. So I think it's really, really important, and this is something that I wish everyone knew, but I think particularly in the Latinx community, there are two pieces. I think one piece is know that there's a place for you in government, and it's not just because of a facet of your identity. It's because you're good at what you do, and you're capable, and you're motivated. And I think that that's really important to internalize, because, kind of bringing it full circle to where I started, you know, my grandmother spoke a lot about humility. My mother still speaks about humility and the fine balance with confidence. And it's important to be humble, but it's important not to underestimate yourself. So I think that that's really critical to internalize. I think something that I wish more folks knew alongside that practice is that public service is not the same as politics. And it is important day in and day out to have people who have the best intentions and the moral compass to ensure that government is functioning every day. And I think that that's important, especially in technology, where oftentimes it's very easy to assume that, or not assume, but it's easy in certain facets of tech to step into a fairly procedural mindset. And when you are able to infuse technology, especially civic tech, with this human perspective, and ask questions about ethical implications of what you are building, what you are shipping, what you are working to improve, I think that there's a huge value add to that. And it's something that may not be spoken of as much, but I think it's really, really critical.
Love that. Getting a lot of kudos in the chat about, you know, public service is not politics. I love that. So do we want to jump into questions? And please share more about your experience, because I think folks are really interested in that, but I want to make sure we get to those. Have any of you faced pushback for being a Latinx individual within the government?
I have not. Yeah.
I guess I'll say this. I don't know what is meant by pushback, but I will say that we need more Latinx. I would strongly encourage more Latinx to consider. We do have something called a diversity guild, which is like a community led within TTS I guess translation of guild would be chapter, where we focus around minorities and diversity, so women, Asian American, LGBT, Black, and I happen to be one of the co-leads. So it is really important, and I know we have a community within TTS that strongly supports it. So I hope that answers your question, but I also hope that it motivates you to apply, because we would love to have more representation.
I should have said that I have not felt a discrimination, but also there aren't many of us. So we don't see each other. We come across and we're like, oh, hey, how you doing? So we need more. I think we need more of the Latinx community.
I think we've scared a couple people with our like besuqueos and hugs and things that we do, right? Which is very typical of our way of greeting each other, right? And that's not super typical. I do see a lot of, eyes and faces sometimes, but I'm like, it's what we do, Jessica, wow, ¿cómo estás? The whole thing, because we're fun that way. Are there opportunities to work for data in civic tech? What a great question. Well, broad, but it's a good one. So I would say there's a lot of opportunity to work in data, and I will just share about the Centers of Excellence has an entire center dedicated to data and analytics. So I would encourage you to check us out, coe.gsa.gov, but across the board in solutions, we have data.gov. We've got a wide range of data analysts. So I don't know if you all want to add anything to that.
I'll add something here. So I love that, because it also gives the opportunity to plug, when we talk about data, it's qualitative and it's quantitative. It also is made up of the data that may be more internal facing, right? So improving our systems, improving our workforce, improving the employee experience, and also external facing, improving the experience for those who are receiving or experiencing services, the government services. So I think there are many opportunities, and I would actually encourage folks to think about the different data of interest, particularly in that qualitative space, because I think oftentimes, especially when we think about healthcare data, this is, definitely a conversation when we talk about the potential of unstructured data and how we can better understand the services we're providing. So would encourage that for folks on the phone.
So I'm going to move on to another question that we got. Are there programs for older workers with a lot of skills that may want to plug into opportunities? Well, it's a tough one. I don't think it's that tough, but, I'll just go ahead and say that, we definitely, I think, aspire or work really hard to recruit people from all walks of life. And we have a wide range in TTS of ages and backgrounds. Could we be more intentional about that? Perhaps. So I'm curious if others have thoughts about that.
I've worked with all ages. It's public service. Like, what you see is there's a representation. There might not be a large community, but it's not rare to see. Even when I was starting out in the Emerging Leaders Program, we had folks, that are really seasoned, because it was a pipeline into government. Coming into government is not the easiest thing. I know TTS has some specialized opportunities in which I would highly recommend. But even just coming into government, I see folks doing it at a retirement stage. I see folks doing it at a second career stage. So I would never shy someone away from like your age or we need it all. We need representation from every level. One thing I will say, like as advice, treat applying to the federal government as like your goal for at some point, because coming in, it takes some time. So I applied to a bunch of different places, and then I put in my application, and they called me, and then I was like, okay, great, this is what I actually wanted. And I applied to a couple more than one thing.
I'm going to throw this question over to Josh if he's still here. Hi, Josh. For the PIF program, what are your recommendations on building a competitive application for someone that has a tech background but no experience in policy? If our pal Josh left, then it goes to Ariel. There he is. Oh, how exciting. He is connecting. How
Can you
fun.
hear me? I'm trying to figure out if I can.
Sure can.
Great.
Sure can.
Can you repeat that question? Because I was actually connecting as you were asking it.
Love it. For the PIF program, what are your recommendations on building a competitive application for someone that has a tech background but no experience in policy?
Yeah, you actually don't need experience in policy to be a PIF. That's part of the unique thing. One of the unique things of the program is we look for folks from the private sector, and you can't actually be a current government folk to become individual to become a PIF. And so we look for, you know, great experience in design, digital strategy, product, entrepreneurship, data science, engineering, and then sometimes specific skills. And then part of the selection process is actually matching you with agencies and the agencies interviewing. So if you're interested in healthcare, someone was messaging me that they're interested in healthcare every year. We have amazing projects at CMS and HHS, CDC, a lot of the healthcare agencies, and you can interview with those agencies. But yeah, I think we put a lot of detail on the site about what we look for, and applying to government role is a little different. So you have to be a lot more kind of specific about how your experience matches the role and really follow those details that are outlined, because even if we want to select someone, if they're not kind of careful about how they describe their experience in their resume in a way that aligns with a job posting, it can be difficult to qualify that person with HR. So I would definitely focus on that. And we have amazing recruiters that are part of the process every year, and they set up sessions to talk you through building a federal resume and that whole process.
Thanks so much for that, Josh. I feel like I phoned a friend. That was so much fun. So this was great. I know we're at time. I would love to keep this going because I've had such a good time, and I hope you all have enjoyed the conversation too. Please connect with us. I know that Marissa and Aileen and everybody is dropping all types of info in the chat. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. I am so excited by connecting with so many folks from, via LinkedIn too. I really want to thank my fellow panelists. They're just such a group of amazing people, and Techqueria for this amazing opportunity. This has been completely our honor, and we really appreciate you hosting us. And I hope you all continue to enjoy this incredible summit and jump into all the good sessions. So thank you, muchas gracias, y hasta luego, and see you hopefully soon.